you'll see here, this whole project's like 10 minutes long. The reason being is because I have sort of the extended mix here, and then right beside it, I have the radio edit in the same project. Oftentimes now, when we go to send a song off to labels or distributor or whatever, there's, you know, an extended version, and then there's the version that goes on Spotify. The version on Spotify is always a lot shorter. But yeah, so basically I'll just do the radio edit in the same project. A lot easier that way for later on. I'm like, oh, I want to go turn the drums down. I can go and like turn the drums down, and then both mixes, it's adjusted. Before I would have two projects. I would have one project that is my extended mix, and then I'd save it, and then I'd have another project that's my radio edit. And so then I'd go and make a bunch of changes in the extended mix, and I'd have to like write down the changes and then open up the other project and try and make all the exact same changes in the other version. This way, way easier. A little more annoying because you'll end up with like 10-minute projects, but definitely way easier. Okay, this is Fade. I'll hit play and we'll go from there. I'll see if I'm missing any... We'll stop her there. So let's dive into this. So this song I actually wrote. So I went to LA and did a writing session with this vocalist that's on the vocal, and I had a handful of other projects that I went into the studio with, and he had actually written this vocal to another song that I was working on. And that other song, I kind of played around with this vocal, and it wasn't fitting as well in that track. I didn't like it as much. And also it didn't sound like this. This is kind of what it sounds like now. Yeah, I feel like I just wanna fade. What it sounded like is, let's see if I can. Take me all the way to another place. I don't wanna wait. All right, there we go. Put me in a daze, bang me out of shape. Yeah, I feel like I just wanna fade. So it has like a whole melody to it. I think this whole little bit. Take me all the way to another place. I don't wanna wait. So he like actually sang it, full melody, whole thing. And if we actually played that with the track, which I think we can do, it's missing some compression and whatnot. Take me all the way to another place. I don't wanna wait. Put me in a daze, bang me out of shape. Yeah, I feel like I just wanna. So I would have written the song like that, and I actually remember a version of it that was like that. And so I would have, kind of written the drums and the bass, and then usually one of the first things that I'm looking for after I build the drums and the bass is a vocal. I find it's one of those things that I can build a song around and really structure things around a lot. And so in that case, I would have, got my kick and my bass, and I probably would have dragged in the whole a cappella of the whole thing. The reason why I cut out some of these other bits is because you don't need this noise bit. There's nothing there. Put me in a day. So kind of structured out. That sounded pretty good. And then again, man, Luke, it was you that said, dude, you should alter by quantize it. And so what that does, if you guys are familiar with Little Altar Boy, is there's a feature on here. No, it's Robot. That's what it is. It's not even quantized. Robot, what it does is it just outputs one note. So it basically gets rid of the melody.
Take me all the way to another place. I don't want to wait.
It doesn't, it's no longer, the vocal's no longer playing a bunch of notes. It's just playing the same note. So, and then I would have pitched it down to whatever. You need to figure out our ears. What's interesting about robot mode, this pitch knob is actually just corresponding to like a note per se. So every -6 is going to be the same sort of note, I think. It doesn't actually depend on the input. So let's see.
Take me all the way to another place.
It's one of these. Is that
Take
right?
me all the way.
What? 9. Thanks. Luke has perfect pitch.
Take me all the way
And then form it.
to another place. I don't want to wait.
There we go.
Put me in a daze. Bend me out of shape. Yeah, I feel like I just want to fade.
And so by not having that melody before, before that went kind of.
Yeah, I feel like I just want. Yeah, I feel like I just want.
I just felt it was a little darker, a little meaner, a little more, I don't know, techno-y. So it's.
Take me all the way to another place. I don't want to wait.
In terms of other processing, I think there's a little bit of auto-tune. At least there was on that one. Before I deleted them all, I saw it there. A little bit of auto-tune. CLA vocals is kind of my go-to vocal suite because I'm lazy and it works well. Then I doubled it up. Another alto boy, probably just adjusting some of the formants. And RVox for a big sort of compressor afterwards. And then a little bit of sidechain, a little bit of pumping on the vocal as well. So we'll just kind of pump in with the kick. Else to talk about the vocals. They were like pretty like straightforward once we got into them. I will say, I think with vocals, again, it's one of those things that you're going to do far, far better off with like a better take than to try and like really fuck with manipulating it a lot. It's one of those things where the recording, definitely a good recording will sound a billion times better than a shitty recording. Oftentimes, if you're dealing with a shitty acapella, you're dealing with a shitty acapella and it might always sound like ass. So there's not too much you can do. Though I will say, because I mean, one of my favorite things to do ever is downloading a shitty acapella and making some shitty bootleg remix. If you are doing that and you have a sample or a vocal or whatever that is sort of scratchy or dirty or not well recorded, lean into the dirtiness of it. Like almost distort it more, dirty it up more, and make that an artistic choice. You're like, oh, like that vocal's meant to be distorted. That vocal's meant to be dirty. You can almost hide some of the imperfections. Where things sound weird is when it's like supposed to sound clean, but it doesn't. And your ears are like, that should sound really clean, but I hear all these little artifacts. But instead, if you're like, oh no, that is intentionally supposed to be dirty, then you can kind of get away with working with shittier sounds to begin with. Little pro tip. Rest of this track, it's going to be a similar process to the last one in terms of a kick. I'm layering. Oh, so many plugins missing, folks. RBass is such a wicked one from Waves, and I'll explain kind of what RBass does. It basically just, you can pick a certain frequency. So what I would do is I would pick the frequency that is my root of my song. So say my song is D sharp. I'm going to go and pick the frequency that the D sharp sits in. And I'm going to boost that specific frequency that is just D sharp. And with kicks, I'm either trying to have them in my root note. So say I'm writing in D sharp major. No one's writing anything in major. Excuse me. Yeah, there's too much black in this room. Say I'm writing D sharp minor. My kick will either be in D sharp or it will be in a fifth of that, which is 7 semitones up. Confusing, I know, but 7 semitones up from the root. And then it's basically like a power chord if you play guitar. And if I have my kick at 7 tones up from my root. Then it also adds a little bit of separation from where that kick is punching. Say that kick is punching, you know, a little bit higher in the frequency range, and my bass sits a little lower, or vice versa. Maybe the kick punches a little lower and the bass is punching a little higher. That separation is going to like give a little bit of separation for the listener's ears as well. If they're both hitting the exact same frequencies, like oftentimes that sounds great as well, but oftentimes they can even bleed into each other. There's a little bit less definition, a little bit less back and forth between the kick and the bass. So sometimes that's a really, really big help if you're finding that your kick isn't cutting through or isn't punching enough. Try it at the root note, but then also try a kick that sort of sits at that higher register. If you're loading a kick and you're like, I don't know what key this is, and sometimes people will write the key and then the key isn't accurate either. So if you don't know, the easiest way to figure that out, and this goes for anything, whether it's a vocal or a perk amp. So you can load up a Spectrum, and then if you open it up here, see on my cursor down here, I can see a little, right now it's saying G, D sharp. As I move my cursor, that corresponds to whatever frequency I'm playing and whatever note I'm playing. So if I hit here, I can see my root is down here, and this is roughly playing a G-ish, G sharp-ish. Now this kick, I would say kind of is sort of in that range, the range of G. If you have like a perk sample, let's say, where are we? A perk is going to be a lot more defined, and you'll be able to see that a lot more, or like a lead or a vocal or something. Even this. Yeah, let me load up a Spectrum there, and you'll be able to see it real well. There we go. See those. So look here. Now I can load up my thing, and I can say, oh, look, that is playing a D sharp, and this is playing an A sharp, and this one is a D sharp again, just by looking down there. So way simpler than loading up a tuner, because tuners sometimes are a huge pain in the ass, and you can't really, they're a little finicky. Using a Spectrum to tune your stuff is going to be a little easier, usually. Wow, in this case, I used my own top loop from my sample pack, which you can buy. But yeah, so loaded that in, and then added this other hat, which, speaking of before, what I was talking about is just like adding in. Like this is the straight up, just the hi-hat open 909. I probably use this sample more than any other sample in the world. Is like that open 909. It's gonna put it into a space. It's gonna put it into a world. It's gonna make it sound like it's house music. So. Yeah, most of it's coming from that. I got a bunch of stabs here. Classic. These ones, similar steel. Just kind of accenting. And they're kind of planting the beat, so it's dun dun vocal, dun dun vocal. It's almost like a call and response between the two. They're not really trying to compete or layer on top of each other. Yeah, and then these also have these other stabs. Where are they? The do. Maybe it's these. From Rave Generator. If you guys aren't familiar with Rave Generator, I recommend everybody go get it. I feel like it might not work on Silicon though. Yeah, I'm concerned because it's super old, but it basically is and I think it's free. Yeah, and it's basically an old Rave Stab synth. So it has all these old vintage Rave Stabs from the 90s that you can just rock out with. And again, if you're trying to make more retro sounding, underground sounding stuff, amazing resource for real, proper Rave Stabs. I use and abuse it too much. That is where that is from. You can kind of see what else I did. So EQ'd it, some saturation, more saturation, compression, lots of compression. Basically just distorting and making it sound like shit. Running through some sidechain there. Let's talk about the bass here for a second. A lot of it that's cool is coming from the automation. and you can kind of see how it goes here. So you'll see I'm almost creating like a little bit of a groove or a pattern as this like opens and closes. It's not just staying steady. And this is just a filter cutoff. So you hear how some of these notes kind of open up. They have a little bit more grit. And I'm doing these sort of like at these almost like these turnaround moments. So it's fading up into it, and then it's whipping that down, fading up into it, kind of whipping back down. Trying to create like a little bit of a pattern, a little bit of groove there. And also this goes back into that, kind of keep the energy moving always. Opening, kind of moving forward. It's all, and even here you can kind of see over time, it's getting like a little bigger. And how I would have done that is I would have just done this. And then you can highlight all of this, and you can even just take this and stretch it like that. Major tip. Anytime you can highlight any bits of automation, there's like these 4 boxes that come around. You can either crush them or open them or stretch them, or you can go like this, and that's just moving the automation. So major tip if you want to like do some cool stuff. Even if you wanted, look, you can do this. Insert like a sine wave, and then you could like take that, make it smaller. I don't know. Duplicated. Wow, automation, guys. Oh, yeah. Look at it. Look at us automate. Anyways, I think I'm geeking because that wasn't always the thing. You couldn't do that in like Ableton 9 or something. You couldn't even do anything back then. You just had... No, it wasn't even... there was a time there the automation... No, it wasn't even like locked to the grid. You couldn't lock the automation to the grid. It was just like free, loose, and there was no like points, and you kind of just had to like free ball it. None of it. Back in my day. So I use this bass throughout the whole build up, and it kind of is the thing that carries the whole song. So you can see here in the build, it really is just opening up throughout that whole period. And it is acting like a build. I do this often with a lot of tracks. I'll have the bass line maybe like turn into a lead or turn into a more of a prominent element during the break, and then maybe cut back down to just a bass in the drops. Anytime I can use an element that's already in my track and sort of repurpose it or use it in a different way at another section of my song, it's already going to kind of like fit with thematically with the song and fit sonically with the song. It's the same concept of like, if in order to make a big swell, a good way to do that is to take a bit of your song, put a bunch of reverb on it and reverse it. That is going to, you're going to get a bunch of a big swell that way, but it's going to sound great. It's going to work with your song because you're already using an element that's in your song. So let's kind of keep looking what I have here. We have this lead. I wish there was something crazy about this lead, but there's not. It's opening in automation. The filter's opening up a bunch. Things are kind of constantly moving. This is opening up. This is opening up. This is opening up. At no point is it just sort of like staying pretty stationary. Even if it's just sort of subtle changes and subtle morphings, I always try to like keep things moving in that direction. I think this is drop 2. I'll play for you. Guys, look at this stab. It's literally nothing. It's just a sample. There's not even an EQ on here. Just like Ableton 9. Literally nothing. But I found... This is what I got. This thing. I pitched it to, D sharp with the rest of my track. Chopped it up. A little bit of MIDI. Not MIDI. Chopped it up and placed it around is what I meant to say. And put it around, built a little rhythm, built a little groove like that versus putting in a sampler. It's kind of the same process. Hopefully these projects are like pretty straightforward. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, and I mean, I wish I had like a secret here of like why the kick is so punchy. In this case, this is a kick from my sample pack, but I would have made it probably in kick 2. But since in this case it was processed pretty great already, I didn't really need to do too much extra processing. This R bass would have just added that spike that I was talking about. That's like in with the key of the track. Kick tweak is sort of just like a general compression clipping type plugin that works really great on kicks. But again, it's not gonna like drastically change it. I have a little top kick that's layered on top of it. So without that, kind of sounds like this. And then with it, cuts through a little more. But I think the biggest things that I can talk about kicks is just, again, swapping the sample, trying to find stuff that works, trying to make sure that your kick is the right pitch, like we talked about before, but also the right length and also the right character. Is it really clicky? Is it really thuddy? Is it really stompy? What types of character does it have? And when you're trying to find a kick, what is probably going to be your best tactic for finding one that you really want is go find some tracks that you love, that are good reference tracks, that are songs that you're sort of like, okay, this is sort of like in my wheelhouse of somewhat of the style I'm looking for, and really A/B their kick to the kicks that you're putting in. A/B, and listen for, how loud is it? How long is it? Is it like a boom, or is it like a really short? Is it loud, long? Is it, all those other characteristics, like I said, thuddy? Is it clicky? Is it, really distorted? Is it not distorted? And then try and like, line those up and try and find a kick that sort of shares a lot of those same characteristics. And then once you're like, 80% of the way there, A/B it again and be like, okay, it's like really close, but maybe it's missing a little bit of low end, or maybe it's maybe it's a little bit too long, or maybe, there's things that you can do. If it's too long, simply just cutting it and adding a fade is really all you need to do. If it's, too, maybe the transient is too loud, there's ways you can add a compressor and to compress that transient and squash it up, or maybe you want to, clip it using a clipper and cut off that transient. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing that'll help you, is just really A/B referencing and trying to like analyze on like a very microscopic level of what their kick sounds like versus what your kick sounds like. And you can kind of go about that throughout all your tracks. Be like, how loud is their clap? How loud is their hat? Same sort of thing. Is it long? Is it short? Does it have a lot of reverb? Is it dry? So many different characteristics that you can sort of reference. And then if you take that, say you're referencing one song for the kick, you're referencing another song for the clap, you can pull from a bunch of different tracks. You're not necessarily, never fear like you're copying or you're stealing or you're biting if you're just sort of like referencing whether it's like a loud kick drum or not. Like, don't worry about that. I often have students that are like, well, I don't want to copy their song. I'm like, well, you're not really copying. You're just sort of like referencing. So, cool. Hopefully that answers your kick question, because there's not really much here.